Hey, bumper away.
Hey, this is Michael O'Neill from the Solopreneur Hour podcast, and you are listening to Vroom, Vroom, Veer with Jeff Smith. Listen up.
Woo! That was awesome. Thank you.
Cool, man.
Cool, man.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom, Vroom, Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to vroom vroom veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Dan Evans, thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff.
So we hooked up through a mutual friend. I think it was Tom Schwab, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, and he was in the Navy. I was in the Air Force. He was like, you should talk to other veterans. And you're still active duty up until this summer. So how's that feel? What's going on in your brain? Are you freaking out?
I think there's a little bit of anxiety that goes with transitioning, and
I'm sure there is. Yeah.
a little bit maybe an understatement, but I feel like I have put in a lot of work in preparation for my transition, and I still haven't heard anything yet. So I've been actively prospecting jobs and job
Right.
boards and building a personal brand and all these things, but the fruits have not yet manifested at this point. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and you're still, well, let's see. So summer is just around the corner. So when exactly? When do you start your terminal leave?
So I go on leave mid-August.
Mid-August. See, so you got to think, I freaked out too when I was getting ready to retire. I know I told you this story a little bit when the last time we talked on the phone. I was so damn busy. I wasn't doing everything that you're doing, which, you should be doing when you transition. I did go to that transition assistance program that lasts like a week or something like that. And, I was doing all the things that you're supposed to do, following a checklist of transitioning. But my heart wasn't really in it because I was still really, really busy, and I had intended to, not be retired on active duty at all. I wanted to, just didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
I wanted to have, I wanted to have a little bit more, time, like to not be so busy with work and just to, have some transition mind space. But here's the thing that I found out is that from the employer's perspective, when they're not going to look at you real hard, or they may be looking at you, but not talking to you until you get like within, hiring time. You know what I'm saying? Because they can't have you sign papers yet.
Right. Yeah. It's still quite a ways out.
It is. Yeah. It is quite a ways out. And I don't think you're going to have a problem finding a job, but don't worry about it. One way or the other, you'll be fine. So let's talk a little bit about how you joined the military. What was that like? What was that high school kid thinking about before he signed up to become a Marine?
Well, Jeff, I've always been very patriotic. I was an Eagle Scout growing up in my high school years. I went to the National Scout Jamboree, and at that point, that moment in time, I saw some of the other branches of the military there, and then I saw the Marines. And I'll just never forget how the Marines it just seemed like they just stood up a little bit taller and just really had clout. And that's just something that I wanted to be a part of at that moment in time.
Wow.
That was it. And in fact, that was August of 2001. And we all know what happened in September of 2001.
Wow. Holy cow.
I was there in New York City just a month earlier. And it was just mind-blowing to me to see those towers come down.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I got to serve. This is it. This is what I got to do. So I told my parents, this is what I wanted to do. And they said, no.
Hoorah. Oh, they said no.
They said no. And
Yeah.
so I ended up joining the day after my 18th birthday.
Okay.
So I guess in order to clear your physical paperwork at the processing station, you got to be 18 when you actually sign the paperwork. So therefore, I didn't do it on my actual birthday. I did it, a day after. So that's how I joined. It was really just a calling that I had. I grew up Mormon, and my parents, they wanted me to go on a LDS mission, a Mormon mission, and instead I joined the Marine Corps.
Wow. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I was, everybody's got a 9/11 story, but now I have to tell mine. I was actually in the Air Force for a while already because I had signed up and been in since 1987. So I went, my first active duty was December 87. So I'm almost 88. So in 2001, I was doing a computer security class in Falls Church, Virginia. And so I was there right in the DC area when, so when they attacked the Pentagon, we could see the smoke from where we were in a building that shared space with the FBI and the ATF for this class. And so they set up a command post in our hotel across the parking lot. It was pretty crazy. Yeah. I never wanted to drink early in the day more than that day.
That's nuts.
We freaked out, none of us, it was weird because we all got together, all the other active duty folks that we were with, I was with, and we made this plan to, somehow make our way to the Pentagon and see if we could volunteer, help, whatever, dig rubble,
Mm-hmm.
And as it turned out, they were like, sure, if you're in uniform, you can do anything you want. Basically just show your ID and say what's going on in your TDY and yada, yada. And we're like, yeah, our TDY is no uniform. And they're like, yeah, you're not getting it. I was like, no. So we had absolutely nothing to do. And, and so we had to finish our class, and then it was just, all of our flights are delayed. Lots of people are like disappearing and driving away. It sucked.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
and
definitely 9/11 to remember.
Yeah. And my wife was freaking out because, all the phones were down. And they wanted to get a hold of me, and I wanted to get a hold of them to let them know that I was okay. And finally, my unit got a hold of me in the hotel, and they're like, "Oh, thank God, you're fine." And I'm like, "Yeah, call my wife, tell her I'm okay." So, yeah, wow, so wackadoo. Okay, so moving on from 9/11 to 9/11 stories. So you started off as an infantryman, right?
I did, yeah. I was in the reserves.
Okay.
I decided to join the reserves actually in case I decided to change my mind about serving a mission for my church, which I didn't end up doing. I didn't end up serving a church mission. But I went into the recruiting office while I was a reservist in 2005, I think, and the supervisor of the recruiting office, he was a staff sergeant. He's like, "Hey, how'd you like to do this full time?" And I said, "Well, let me think about it." And he gives me a call later on that day. He's like, "Hey, you should really think about this." I forgot to mention I was in really, really good physical shape. I was a personal trainer, so I was kind of like, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I was kind of like a poster boy Marine,
Right.
Walking in there and I guess, they're trying to ramp up for the war. And
You had the look, as they say.
I had the look.
Right.
So, long story short, I ended up doing it. And, that was really eye-opening for me. I realized a lot of things about myself at that point when I became an active duty recruiter. And that is, I'm an introvert. And going up to people and talking to them all day long about the Marines, especially people who, really I share no common interest with, proved to be pretty tough. I got married when I was 20.
Wow.
I went home at night, and my new wife would want to talk, and I was just sapped from
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
extroverted all day.
Right.
So, that was challenging, but I was able to learn some things about myself, and I failed for a few months on recruiting duty, and the next thing that I did was headed over to Borders. They don't have Borders anymore, but like a Barnes & Noble, and I picked up a bunch of audiobooks and started listening to like Zig Ziglar and Dale Carnegie and Napoleon Hill and those types of things. And
Wow. Yeah. Right.
started self-educating and learning how to communicate better. And really, I would say that saved me. That
Sure.
saved
Yeah.
me.
You learned. Right. Yeah. There's some key books that you nailed there. Dale Carnegie is awesome. What was his big book? Like How to Win Friends and Influence People? Is that the one?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, that's an amazing book, and so much different than than what I thought it was going to be all slimy and salesy, and it was really good. I mean, he was just like, it's a fantastic book. He was just like, what was this big thing? It was like, people get hung up on agreeing and disagreeing. And he was like, just put that aside. And this is what I took away from it anyway. And just try to understand what the other person is saying. And if you just focus on understanding where they're coming from, whether or not you disagree or agree is going to be immaterial because they're going to like you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Even if you choose to disagree at the end of the interaction, at least they're going to respect you and, think you're an okay person because you're not just sitting there trying to win,
Yeah, whoever wins the argument loses.
Exactly. You're right. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, and I know what you're talking about as far as like, somebody told me when I was still in the active duty that the difference to them between an introvert and an extrovert is that an extrovert is actually energized by interacting and speaking with people. And the opposite is true for an introvert. So it's like an introvert can do everything that an extrovert can do, but they are like, it's like this Herculean effort to put in. It's a lot of energy. So that's kind of like what you were describing. You were just like, my brain is toast.
Yeah, I'm just done. I was just ready for bed. When I get home from work. And being a Marine Corps recruiter, I mean, it's probably one of the most inefficient jobs on the planet. And it's
right.
20
Just call everyone that's graduating from high school. Basically.
Yeah, 20 hours a day. And, back then we had a paper tracking system.
Yeah.
So we're sitting here writing with stubby pencils on.
And this is 2005?
Yeah, it's 2005.
Wow.
I know, it's hard to believe.
Yeah, right.
The Marine Corps is, the world's finest fighting force. However, we are the most primitive. And that extends into the recruiting world as well. So,
wow.
So it was quite the experience, Jeff.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow. I guess the old school folks would say, well, you're fault tolerant. We can recruit people even if there's an apocalypse.
Yeah.
I suppose you've modernized since 2005, one would hope.
Yeah, we switched to a electronic CRM, and
that's great.
It doesn't work as well as I would like. That was my next thing. But hey, it's better
than paper. Right. Exactly. Okay. So move off of 2005. What's the next? So how long did you stay in recruiting as a recruiter?
So I was a recruiter until about 2008.
Okay.
And as a sergeant, I got tasked to go stand up a small recruiting station with 3 other recruiters that were just failing miserably.
Mm.
And that was, for me, it seemed like the dream job, because when you're working as a recruiter, you're like, man, what does the boss do? Like that guy doesn't do anything. He goes out during the day.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah.
You're looking at her and he's like, you want to be that guy. Grass is always greener kind of thing, right?
Grass is not green when I get there.
like, where's all the green grass? Damn it.
I got a 45-minute commute every morning instead of 10 minutes.
Ugh, yeah.
And, I'm showing up there and, I'm really excited to be in charge and have the responsibility to lead Marines. I think that's what every Marine lives to do is lead Marines.
Right.
And, I learned so many things about myself during that 2 years that it really had an impact on me. Just understanding people, not just sales isn't just between, the recruiter and the applicant. I realized that I was selling the recruiter every single day on the job at hand. When they're looking at me like, hey, I don't know how we're going to, meet these manpower goals. And I'm just looking back at them like, I don't know how we are either, but we're going to do it. And we're going to figure it out. Somebody is going to join the Marines between now and Friday. I don't exactly know who, but we're going to find that individual and we're going to help them.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Yeah.
And, they seemed to follow suit, and we were successful. And, all during this time, I was doing this self-education process of listening to books on tape. Anthony Robbins at that point.
Awaken the Giant Within.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what else? 7 Habits of Highly.
Yes, that's man. You've read all the good books. That's a really good book.
I've listened to that one multiple times, and I always get something different out of it every single time I listen to it.
You must drive in a car a lot. You must do a lot of commuting because that's where people listen to audiobooks and podcasts, right?
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse.
I made up a word for blessing and curse. It's blurs.
I'm going to use that.
You can use it. It's not.
I'll give you credit.
It's not blurs TM. Not yet, anyway. Thanks for playing along with my made-up word.
Blurst.
Blurs. Like blurs, or what else could it be? It could be, let's see. It could be a Klessing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, okay. Yeah, that's, I wanted to digress a little bit here because whenever I got to work with other Marines, I was always just like, I know this can't be a universal, because everybody has like, a range of folks in their service. But the sampling of folks that I worked with that were Marines were just, just really just enthusiastic and ready to engage, and I think that's like the Air Force. It's a little bit more difficult to get these folks motivated, where Marines are like, let's do this thing. It's like the Air Force guys were always like, I got to get my coffee. Marines we'll do it.
Coffee too.
They do.
And, I would say.
But they're up, and running, and then they're drinking coffee. And, by the time it's time to go to work, they're ready.
Marines are very comfortable being uncomfortable, and
right.
And that's something that I think is unique to the Marine Corps. We're sitting there training in a monsoon, or, it's just the weather's just crap, or, it's hot.
You guys eat that shit up, really.
Well, we become very cynical and make jokes out of it.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And we could always think of a scenario that could be worse, quite honestly. It's
obviously.
Like, it could be worse. It really could be a lot worse than it is right now.
Yeah, well, I had to, I would go home when I deployed to Saudi Arabia. And I was getting yelled at because of a troop, right? And I don't like to get yelled at because of a troop. So I think I was an E6. I was a tech sergeant, and she was a senior airman in E4. And she was really mouthy and getting me in trouble. So she would be mouthy to, some captain, some random person that came into the office asking for help. And then that captain would in turn chew me a new one and then, stomp out and say, take care of your troop. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to take care of my troop. And then my boss would be like, you can do anything you want, just don't write anything down. And I'm like, what do you mean? That's all we can do. We're in the Air Force, and he was of the mind of, let's just talk. Right. And she had been screwing up like way before I got there, and had been talked to on numerous occasions, right? And in my disciplinary book, you only get talked to once, maybe twice on the same topic before I start writing things down. And he was just really loath to write things down at all. And I was like, that's the wrong call, dude. I deferred on the first one. And then on the second one, I'm like, look, I can write stuff down, and I'm going to, because I'm a supervisor. You do what you got to do, boss. And he's like, fine, and then he actually went off and wanted to, take it higher than I wanted to. I just wanted to do like a little memo, put it in my desk and say, okay, if you don't straighten up, I'm going to send this home to your commander. That was my thing, and if you straighten up now, I'll shred it before you go home, because we're all on deployment, right? So nobody at home needs to know you are an idiot if you straighten up. And I made her sign that. And she had another tissy fit, went off, talked to her staff sergeant buddy at the E5 that was in the office, and she came back very respectful and signed it. I was like, thank you. I was like,
Wow.
Yeah. But the thing is why I got on this story was I went home and I started whining to my roommate in the dorm, deployment roommate dorm, very Air Force, right? And I'm like, he's like, you didn't get shot at and you're in a war zone, so you had a good day. And I'm like, yeah, you're right.
He's got a point.
He's really, really got a point. I got to shut up because I'm really whining way too much. Okay, so let's flash forward and talk about how in the heck did you do this social media thing? There's got to be a cool story as to how you became this social media strategist. How did that happen?
All right. So as my career progressed, I was put in charge of a recruiting office, and in 2010, I got moved back down to the recruiting office that I started in, which was in Provo, Utah. And in 2011, 2012, we started to see kind of a shift in our culture. We weren't able to get in touch with as many applicants as we used to in the past through telephone calls. We were getting a lot more parents. We were getting bad numbers. People were screening calls because caller ID became more of a thing.
Right.
And there's this thing going on in the background, Facebook, right? And I'm like, well, what's this? Let's try this out. My wife's already on it, and I created an account, but I didn't really do a whole lot with it. So I created a Facebook business page for my recruiting office, and we started automating some content, sharing some stuff from our national Facebook page to this local Facebook business page for our recruiting substation. And we weren't getting a whole ton of engagement. So, we made a lot of mistakes. And one day in 2012 or 2013, I can't remember, we had a couple new Marines drop by the office. That's customary for what they do when they graduate from boot camp. They visit the recruiting office that Monday, they graduate Friday, and shake the recruiter's hand and say, hey, thanks, for everything. They show up in their blues. We, make sure that their uniform's good for when they go and check into their school. And I'm like, hey, why don't we take a picture of these guys and put it up on Facebook? And so we did. We tagged them in the photo, and it was shared to their profiles. And immediately, we're getting all these likes and hits, and I'll tell you, Jeff, it was like crack, man. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All these people are so supportive, and I, it's just kind of putting two and two together in my head. I'm like, these guys probably told maybe 5 or 6 people that they are home joining the Marines. We just told probably 1,200 because
Right.
they're
Right.
well
Right.
connected, on Facebook. With a lot
All of their families and everybody that they graduated with, because these are recent grads. If they're just out of boot camp.
right.
So all of the kids that they graduated with are probably still close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's crazy is like I'm looking at the numbers and I'm like, man, 1,200 people have seen this post. Oh,
Wow.
like, it's like a few hours into this. I'm like, this is nuts.
It would take you how long to make 1,200 phone calls? Oh my goodness. Wow.
Granted, they're not all in our market. They're
Right.
influencers. They're stakeholders. They're relatives or friends or family of this individual who just joined. It takes the 6 degrees of separation and effectively consolidates it down to 2 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't long before I was looking at all of our programs that we have in recruiting, all these programs that we use to support our recruiting mission. Our high school program where we go and deliver awards to the school. We have an educators workshop where we send teachers down to San Diego and they get yelled at and kind of see firsthand how Marines are made. We've got
fun.
the events we do like at fairs and local community involvement, Toys for Tots, assistance, all these things. And then at the center point of all of this, we've got the people who are joining the Marines from that local community. So we started looking at all these things and we're like, okay, well, what can we capture and share and kind of break down those barriers about checking out the Marines? Because I noticed that the Marine Corps commercials are really awesome, but they really aren't very informative about the enlistment process. And then the hardest thing about recruiting duty, Jeff, is getting somebody to walk through that door.
Right.
And if we can break down those barriers up front, by being transparent about the enlistment process. I mean, most people don't know that we hold people in our program for, sometimes up to 410 days to prepare them for boot camp. And we work out with them on a weekly basis. We are we're interactive with them. We mentor them as recruiters, and we were able to.
So it's almost like you're pre-in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We're preparing them, and we're not just telling new people that are coming in the door what we do to prepare them. We're actually able to show them, through relevant proof, through social proof, through people that joined from the local community, people that they know, maybe through a friend or whatever, but it's more trustworthy. So we weren't doing really anything different other than just showcasing and amplifying using social media, using Facebook specifically to tell the Marine Corps story.
Right. So you were, every time you had like a group of recruits get together to do a thing, right? You'd take a couple of pictures and you'd tell a little story, right?
That's it. Everybody's got a story, and everybody loves a good story.
Amen. Yeah. Wow. Who'd have thunk? I mean, the last time we talked about how it was, how like all social media sites on government networks, or at least DoD networks, up till, I want to say like, when was it? Maybe like 2007, 2008-ish, maybe? They were blocked on government networks. I don't know the exact time frame. Because I know, I think it was after I got out. So it was after 2008 for sure, I think. I don't remember the specific date. But that's how, closed off, just the institution of the DoD, the military, was to everything social media. They were like, that's just a security threat.
Yeah, it's just crazy how these paradigms have shifted over the years.
Yeah.
But there's still dinosaurs that I fight with on a daily basis in my current role.
I can imagine.
That just really, they're into biz dev of the 90s, for recruiting. And unfortunately, that doesn't work, and they just need to retire. So I apologize if any of them are listening to this.
Okay, so you started still, that was like where you were working with, you were using social media at your little recruiting station to tell the story, like you were saying. But what is your job now? Because is it for like like a larger group?
Yeah, let me
Yeah,
fill
yeah,
in fill in the
yeah.
rest of
Fill
the
in the
story.
gaps because there's more to the story.
So I scaled out my strategy to recruiting station Salt Lake City, which at the time was 5 states. It was Utah, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, and I think I'm missing a state, but I can't remember what it is. Part of Colorado, possibly. I can't remember. But I scaled out the strategy. I'm doing a training seminar at like an all hands. You know, we've got all our recruiters in there, and the colonel from our region walks in on my class. He's like, "Hey, how would you like to come out and do this, you know, in San Diego?" And at the time, I was pretty set on getting out. And I'm like, well, let me go talk to my wife. And, you know, part of me is like, you just need to get out, dude. You know, because at that point, you know, I'd been in for about 10 years. And I was ready to, you know, try out some new things. I was going to school. I was, you know, making sure the grass on the other side of the fence was watered and green and not brown. But you know, long story short, I took the opportunity. I scaled out the strategy to recruiting station Salt Lake City. I nailed the strategy, and then I scaled it across the Western U.S. In this newly created position, which still is not on the books, is the social media director for Marine Corps Recruiting West.
Wow.
And I got down to San Diego, started building out all these social media properties for all of our recruiting sites across the Western U.S. So we've got about 170 Facebook pages, and
So one for each office?
one for each office, yeah. And I train all the recruiters. I've got a mobile training seminar that I have that is an interactive PDF that links to YouTube videos, as well as I do in-person seminars with all of the recruiting stations. And I've got some pictures actually of me doing those training seminars on my website and on my Facebook page.
I want to check that out. Yeah.
I usually take a selfie at the end of every seminar, and then I post it online, you know, just because I'm a practitioner. I use social media. I think it's a great thing. I'm very transparent about who I am and what I represent. And, you know, I teach the recruiters the same concept, you know, building a personal brand, somebody that's trustworthy. You know, if they've got this super spammy profile, personal
Right.
profile, and they're trying to engage with all these people and send them messages, you know, like, hey, do you want to check out the Marines? And it's, you know, this very spammy solicitor type profile, you know, nobody's going to respond.
Yeah. Either they're going to like go ew or think you're a robot, one or the other.
Exactly. It's either going to confirm or deny the stigma that's out there about military recruiters.
Right.
My job and really what I sell the recruiters on is the value of building a personal brand, and not just how that's going to help them now, but how it's going to help them down the road.
Right. Yeah, and you're also changing attitudes in general about Facebook. I mean, obviously, it's a force multiplier when it comes to your job. I mean, that's clear because that's your target audience, all those 18-year-olds basically. But you know, a lot of folks just think that Facebook is a way to get in trouble for young kids, you know, and of course that can happen. But I mean, it still doesn't mean that it doesn't have value, you know, in the business world.
It absolutely has a ton of value.
Right.
And really, it's about working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of idea fairies in the military. And you and
I'm
I
glad you call them the idea fairies in the military.
She's going around sprinkling her idea fairy dust about, you know, processes and programs that need to be implemented. You know, this is not one of those idea fairy type programs. This is a must.
Right.
The recruiters that are making it today are using social media to effectively make their recruiting mission. And the way I look at it is as a leader, I have a responsibility to do more. It's not a license to do less. So giving them the best tools that they have that are available, the best that I know how, is really just about being a leader and passing that training to them and ensuring that, their family they're able to see their family first off, because I'm
Yeah, I would imagine like, I know like the Marines are really concerned about their numbers and jacking those up and getting more Marines in. That's kind of like the gig, right? But on the other side, it's also probably helping the recruiters getting some of their life back because they can meet their goals, that they have to do something, maybe they're not going to have to work 20 hours a week anymore. Well, they probably still do.
20 hours a day.
20 hours a day.
20
That's
hours
20.
would be a dream
That would be
job.
great, right? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, let's all sign up for 20 hours a week. Oh, wait a minute. We only want to work 4 hours a week. We read Tim Ferriss. No, but they are do you have hardcore numbers on that, or do you just get a soft feel from the recruiters that you talk to that it's made their life easier?
Yeah, the recruiters that are using the systems and the processes are definitely seeing a result. I've got, all kinds of numbers that I can spit at you, but it may be too complex for a podcast.
Yeah, right.
But quarter one, we had, I think, 55 million impressions organic on Facebook.
Wow.
We're not paying
Yeah.
for this stuff.
55 million?
55 million.
Wow. That's up there.
1.2 million engagements, so likes, comments, and shares on our Facebook pages. That's just from January 1st to March 30th of 16. So
you got to get tell me this, how cool do you get to make the pictures? I mean, because Marines get to do some pretty cool stuff. Do you get to have muddy people jumping over fire?
I actually train the recruiters to make pictures like that.
Right. Yes, exactly. You need to do that because people love that crap. What do they call those mud runs? They call them mud runs, but don't the Marines have specific mud runs?
No, we just call them mud runs.
Okay.
In fact, they've got the Camp Pendleton mud run.
Right.
We have log runs. We run with ammo cans. We run with all kinds of awesome things that are heavy.
And you jump over fire?
We don't really jump over fire.
Oh, damn it.
But we do make fires with, weapons. So that's cool.
There you go.
But not in our recruiting program. We actually try and keep everybody intact and good.
Yeah.
Before we ship them off to boot camp. And
they have all kinds of those mud runners. They have just a crazy cult following, and they like to be muddy and take pictures of themselves jumping over fire. I want to do one of those. I think they run one a zombie run. Have you ever heard of that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah, those seem pretty cool.
Yeah.
In fact, that's where I got a lot of the ideas for implementing this program, is from companies like Tough Mudder and what's the other ones? You got the zombie run. You got, there's just a bunch of them out there, and that's really where I got the idea for this.
Sexy, fit people doing crazy stuff muddy.
Yeah. Who doesn't want an awesome photo of themselves?
Right.
Running around with a log or
simulating something awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's actually awesome all by itself. It's like the Mythbuster effect. Everybody wants to see explosions in their lives now, for reals. Okay, so now that you're going to transition out of the Marines, what are you looking at doing in the future?
I really like the marketing science space. So I've already been doing some work as a consultant on the side, but right now my eyes are on Facebook.
Right.
And I think that would just be an amazing opportunity to work with some really smart people. And, Mark Zuckerberg, he just finished his keynote speech.
Yeah, I heard that the other day, yeah.
The F8 Summit. I mean, that guy
he wants to take over the world, basically.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
He's brilliant. He sees the future. And I see where he's going, and I see some opportunities there. So I want to be part of that. whether it comes sooner or later, we'll see. But definitely working in some kind of a corporate space.
Okay.
Immediately after I get out, at least for the time being. I think that's a good move for anybody transitioning out. I would eventually like to do my own business, but I got the rest of my life to do that, and you just never know who you're going to meet when you're working in one of those roles at some of those companies.
Yeah. I think I went to one of those seminars, and this guy is all about. And we talked a little bit about this. He kind of sold me on the utility of Facebook ads, and you said you hadn't played with that feature that much, but I know that that space all by itself is really neat. Especially there's folks out there that just because it's such a slow uptake for like local business to get into it. It's like, they're already an entrepreneur. They're already like, really busy, and, they just can't wrap their brain around this newfangled thing, to make their life easier. Right. So there's this dude that runs the seminar. That's how he made his money. Now he still kind of plays with that. It's kind of like his bread and butter kind of thing. Mm-hmm. How to really, use Facebook ads to get that highly granular lead generation kind of ad, and he had all sorts of strategies. I just, from my perspective, I don't get how you start selling that as a service. That was my question to the whole universe at that thing. It was like, okay, so how do I just walk up to somebody and say, hi, I'd like to sell you some cheaper lead gens. I don't know how to do that. You'd have to have a Facebook ad to sell Facebook, I guess.
Well,
Maybe.
That's an interesting point you bring up, Jeff. And really, I think he's selling time. Because what does that take? How much time does that take that entrepreneur to sit down and learn Facebook ads? In so many different ways, it's going to be just much cheaper to outsource it.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing there. It's like, you don't want to go in there and say, I'll show you how to do it. No, you want to go in there and say, I'll come in and I'll charge X, and which will be way cheaper than any one of your ad runs, and we'll see what happens. Like a little $100 ad investment experiment, and see what happens. I mean, I never did run an experiment. I experimented with the Facebook boost this post thing, and then I found out that that's stupid.
Well, it does have utility.
Oh, it does. Okay.
It's very specific to what your goals are.
Okay.
Now, maybe you want to create awareness, in which case boosting a post is the perfect match for awareness.
Mm-hmm. Because all it does is just sort of like put a bunch of numbers on it, right?
It amplifies it.
Right. It makes it look shinier than it might otherwise look.
It just stands out in the news feed of the people that are following your page, or friends of people who are following your page.
Yeah. The thing that I didn't like about it was a bunch of like people that weren't really interested liking my thing. So it seemed weird.
Yeah, and that happens.
Right. I don't know how that works.
You got to experiment. You got to try.
Yeah. Right.
And
for sure.
To measure the results and compare and adjust.
Right. Yeah, and everything you did was more on the just generating organic sort of engagement. Yeah. And to me, that is really what Facebook. Well, I mean, on the ad side, it's really neat. I've just never had anything I necessarily wanted to advertise. So, I never really played with it. I guess some podcasters have used it just to generate listeners. I don't know if it works for that or not. I guess it could. Maybe. I'll have to play with it. Okay. So, this has been a blast. I think even if you end up, I think you will, but in the corporate world, you're going to do great. It's going to be a blast. Transition is scary, so don't sweat it.
Thanks for the encouragement, Jeff.
Yeah. I mean, I say that to everybody because everybody, I knew this chief. She was a E9, and she literally was going through, like, no kidding, serious nervous breakdown when she was getting close to her retirement. Just because she stayed in the Air Force for 30 years. I mean, it was literally her life. She was so identified with her uniform and her Air Force identity. And for that just to not be there anymore, it just like was devastating, I mean, she knew it wasn't a financial thing. It was just like, what am I going to do? Who am I? It was like this identity crisis, right? She got one of those jobs where you get to wear a uniform and you're not even active duty anymore, but you working for the school system or something. And she was just blessed. She was like, I still get to wear my uniform. I still get to some sort of, I can't remember what they call it, but it's like you're working for some state level government and
JROTC or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Something like that. Where you get to be the commandant and, you get to wear your uniform every day and still more or less, seem like you're still in the Air Force.
Well, God bless her.
Right.
That's what she wants to do.
Right. If that's what she wanted to do and, got over that identity crisis because you didn't have to change, that's great. But you'll be fine. You'll do great. I mean, maybe I'll start a business and hire you.
Sounds like a plan, Jeff.
All right, brother. This has been a blast. We should do this again, and I'm going to be on your show.
Sounds like a
Talk
plan.
about veteran stuff.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Thank you so much for taking out time on your busy evening.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for having me. And
you know what? Before we hang up, we have to talk about your stuff. I didn't pimp your stuff. We got to do that. Your website is danevansonline.com.
That's correct.
Talk a little bit about what you're doing there. I know you got your own podcast that I'm going to be on. What is your podcast name? Hold on. I'm going to look so we can sound professional. The Military Entrepreneur Show. And I can still be on, right? Because I'm a wantrepreneur. I want to entrepreneur. I'm just not making any money yet. Most of them don't. All right. So what do you talk about on your show?
So I started this podcast on my 30th birthday, April 7th, 2015, to help me with my transition out of the Marines. So basically what I've been doing is interviewing successfully transitioned veterans who work in the entrepreneur space and who are business owners or CEOs, executives, and learn from what's working for them and what worked for them to make a successful transition. It's undiluted. It's very straightforward.
Yeah, it's conversational. I listened to one of the guys. I think was an actor.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he had really good stories because
Scott Levy.
Yeah, and he didn't start out as an actor. That was a really good show. I was like, wow. And here he wasn't he? Was he a Marine too, or was he in the Army?
Yes, he was a Marine.
Marine. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it's a good show. I liked it. Then there was a couple other. I listened to I think 2 episodes. And I can't remember all the details about the other guy. He was talking a lot more about his business. And it was a good show. I just, blanking on the details at the moment, but still it was fun because, obviously being another veteran, I can relate to all the veteran-y stuff and it is, I'm blowing over it, but I was really stressed out before I retired. So I get it. I feel for you, man, but you'll be fine. You'll be great on the other side. So yeah. So, enjoy that show and we'll check it out. And I'm looking forward to being on your podcast as well.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, Jeff.
All right. Have a good night.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.